Paper Bag Series. I am with your co-host, Mr. Kola Adetola.
Thank you. I'm here with your host, Mr. Brandon Lewis.
Greetings, and welcome to the Brown Paper Bag Series. I am with your co-host, Mr. Kola Adetola.
Thank you. I'm here with your host, Mr. Brandon Lewis.
And today we have a very special guest. We have Miss Kelly Good, who is very creative. She's an artist. She's former president of Black Student Union. She's a writer. She just does a lot of different things, has a lot of different experiences that she wanted to come and just share with us today. So we're very honored and pleased to have her. So thank you for being here.
Let's see what's in the bag.
Oh, okay. Betrayal.
Betrayal. Oh, interesting. Okay, so you'll start us off with betrayal. What's in mind?
That's really hard. So for me, I guess I've dealt with a lot of, issues from like different people, but I don't really want to focus on betrayal. I want to talk about it, but I don't know. I want to focus on more on the positive. You know what I mean? So let's not focus on the negative.
Right.
I mean, we all know what betrayal means, but what does that really do? You know? So I want to focus more on the positive and how we can kind of step away from that. That's really it.
Thank you. So I'd say betrayal. I think it's a really interesting point that there's positive things that come out of the idea of betrayal, right? Because when someone betrays, or when you felt betrayed, you learn from those experiences. You know what I mean? It's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Sorry, George Bush couldn't get that right, but yeah. But all jokes aside, you learn from those experiences, and so you can take some positive. But it also teaches you, that people who really have your back, and you learn. Life teaches you who those people are, and and so I think that's what I'd say about
Betrayal.
Mr. Kola Adetola.
My man Brandon. Betrayal. One perspective I like to target that word with is, I feel like a lot of people focus on betrayal. When I say a lot of people focus on, I mean, like, you ever heard it saying, I know you heard it, but when people are like, I got haters, I feel like people seek to have haters. And you kind of like set yourself up to be betrayed, because it's kind of expectation that you self-create. And from that perspective, like Kelly was saying, it's a negative energy kind of aspect thing. And if you focus on it too much, you're just inheriting negative energy. So there's not really a positive way to look at betrayal, except for how you say you can grow from it, fool me once, fool me twice kind of thing. But at the same time, I feel like it's just people created it themselves. It doesn't really need to exist if you don't view for it to happen. That's my piece.
So, thank you everyone for giving their thoughts on betrayal and always remaining positive, right? So again, we have a very special guest with us today, and we're going to open it up with the first question, right? So tell us a little bit about who you are, and when you hear this thing called creative, that's one of the introductions you had. What kind of comes into play with who you are?
I think I'm not gonna go into a long story because I can, but I think defining like creative, or what it means to be like, to have like creativity, is a very, difficult thing to like, think about or talk about. Being a creative is just like, I think in my opinion, is having an understanding of like your experiences and knowing how to make that into like art. Just in like a smaller like definition.
So that's your definition. I want to build on that. Do you feel like anyone could be a creative? And in addition to, do you feel like anyone could be a creative? Do you feel like there's any limitations to where creativity could extend to?
Yeah, I feel like creativity can extend to any space, but I think having the understanding of being creative is what makes you a creative, if that makes sense. So
repeat that one time.
Having the understanding of being a creative makes you a creative, versus just creating out of just creating. I don't know.
You know what? I feel like years from now, people are gonna look that up, and somebody's gonna quote you. And I can see it as one of those like little meme things, like, you know what I'm saying?
I got it though.
That was some words. That was good. That was really interesting.
And then the first part of that I said, do you feel like anybody can be one?
That was kind of answering it. So, do I feel like anyone can be one? I think having that understanding of what it is, what a creative is, and how you add that to like everyday life or just like your work or even just existing. So I guess it's like almost saying, can anybody sing? I mean, with the proper coaching or whatever, anybody can sing, but are they really singing?
Might not sound good to everybody.
Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm gonna kind of shift gears and just talk a little bit about just the years that I've known you. You know, as the president of Black Student Union, always being like a face and a voice within activism. I think that, you know, you really truly embody this idea of you're going to utilize your voice to make changes, and I think that's really cool. So over that time of getting to know you, one of the things is like seeing you go into the person that, you know, well, the idea of, you know, going through the transition to become, I guess, a trans woman, right? That experience, and I'll admit, you know, that even though I've read some things, you know what I mean, like when I was in grad school and so forth, that experience of knowing you, right? I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to just think about what I say, how I say it, challenging myself to think about my own my beliefs, and you know what I mean. It's really complex, but so in learning and looking at what particularly Black trans women go through, because even when you hear white trans women talk, they talk about this idea of this is really bad for me, and here's some of the statistics. However, as a Black trans woman, it's even worse, right? And so it's got me thinking. Had me thinking about when people say, "Oh, people choose these certain things." I'm like, why would you choose that? You know, why would you choose it? You know what I mean? It's all these different things that kind of come to mind. And so the question that I have after saying all of that is, if I know it's like kind of very broad, so just touch on what you want to, but describe that experience. Describe like some of the things that you've gone through in being who you are.
It's a lot, but I guess kind of talk about a lot of different things you talked about. You were talking about the whole conversation on deciding. I think I wouldn't use the word decide. I think maybe audacity. So people having like that audacity to kind of exist as their like authentic selves. I would say that, I guess, and then also going into some of the things that I've dealt with like. On top of being a creative, I think it's interesting kind of talking about that intersection, I guess.
Intersectionality.
Yeah, being creative and also being like, you know, trans or being like an activist and like being all these different things.
Oh, true, right.
Yeah, it's really interesting to really like dissect that. But I've dealt with like, I guess, being homeless, losing family members or support from friends and family, just a lot of different things. But I don't always like to focus on like the negative, you know what I mean? I want to focus on like the growth and like the person I'm like becoming because of these different experiences. That's also going into like that betrayal thing we talked about earlier, which is like we have to step away from those discussions of negativity and focus on like some of the things that are more like positive and uplifting and like these positive representations, you know? So yeah, and then also going into activism, I think it's really interesting being like this queer woman or this trans woman and like existing in the space of activism, whether it's like in Black spaces or just women spaces, and not always talking about me being trans, you know? So it's this thing we say like stealth, meaning like you don't really discuss like your transness or don't really talk about it to a lot of people based on like maybe the experiences you may deal with or even just access. So I know I'm jumping around a bit, but
that's
just
a great
kind
thing.
of
You have a conversation with you know me.
I can jump around, you know.
I want to further the last statement you made, like put together, to get your perspective on this form of question. So you mentioned you called it stealth.
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, you said not addressing.
Not discussing like your transness and like all the spaces that you exist in.
So I have like a direct question for you.
Okay.
From me.
Go ahead.
So you know how long I've known you.
Uh-huh.
I've known you. I met Quinn.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I form a friendship with somebody, that person is who I know. And no matter what they go through, or what they did, or whatever transition from there, I respect the original person that I met. So my question to you is, do you feel like, should I be at fault in any form or way if, because I respect the person I met, once that person goes through a transition that is, whether internal or external for you, I guess a little bit of both, should I also transition with you?
Well, that's an interesting question you asked, but think about it like this. Stepping away from like transness or anything related to like, well, not necessarily identity, but think about it like this. So you have friends that are like maybe in creative spaces or maybe a certain type of person and they change.
Right.
So you're growing up with somebody, not you didn't grow up with me, but someone you may have known from like your adolescent ages to like now, they may have changed. Do you change with them, or do you say, oh, I know you as this person, I've known you since you were 8 or 7? You change with the person.
To be 100% honest, I say the same thing, because let me clarify the picture. So let's say a friend that I had since 3rd grade, right?
Mm-hmm.
They grew up. Well, we both grew, but they grew up and they started doing, I guess, bad things or something. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, they became a murderer or something. The person who was my friend in 3rd grade, I'm always respect and hold that friendship dear, no matter what it is they did. Because that person I met, that person I put a friendship with, I'm not going to change and be like, oh, I accept this murderer.
Well, maybe not. Okay, that's the kind of, you should switch it around, because I mean,
He's like, that's
you're talking about something bad.
But right.
Let's say you talk about something good. Let's say this
Okay,
person
okay.
was a thief or something at first, and then they got
changed
better.
their
Are you always going to look at them as a thief? Or are you never going to trust them? This is your friend.
Right.
What do you do? I mean, you have to, throughout life you meet people and you realize that people change. Life is about like an ever-changing moments.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just like be tied to what you think or what you expect someone to be, because people aren't always what you expect them to be, even not even being trans, but being, I don't know, black. You may say, oh, this person may conceptualize things a certain way. Mm-hmm. And when they really don't, you still have to look at them as like an individual and still respect like that person.
I understand your viewpoint.
That's one good point.
But
you way past you. That's
you're right.
I want
I need to know, like, should I be
come back.
at fault?
You got one more. Now you get me all the time.
Should I be at fault for not transitioning?
No, I'm not. That's not your. I'm not expecting you to do that, but I am expecting you to respect me. So
Right.
if, let's say, I don't know, let's say if I wasn't trans and I didn't change my name or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say I just changed my name just because. I'm expecting you to call me that. You know what I mean? I'm not expecting you to call me this other person. Or say if this is my artist name and artist spaces, I want you to address me as like this artist. You know, it's not necessarily about politics or anything like that. It's at the end of the day, it boils down to like respect and how you view this person. You think I'm a respectable person, I hope.
Right.
You know, so
Can I say something too? Can I say
expect
something?
that, but yeah.
Can I say something too? And we're off format, but just to help.
I'm sorry.
Maybe no.
It's about
It's
me.
this.
No, I understand.
There was one question.
But I want to speak to this. I want to speak to
understand
this.
where
So
you're coming from.
I think I do too. And let me see if I can say it in my own way,
Okay.
just because of the way that I conceptualize it, right? To borrow from you. When I was in high school, I had a really good friend, and he was from Gambia, right? Even today, really close friends with him. I met him probably like in '94, right? It wasn't until 2000 and maybe 12 that he changed something about him. I grew up calling him Gory. Gory was my boy, thick and through. Every time I saw him, Gory, Gory. Around 2012, 2013, he told me, you've been pronouncing my name wrong for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so my response was, why didn't you tell me? He was like, because, I didn't feel comfortable telling you that because it was a different name. It was a unique name and things like that. He didn't feel comfortable, right? I had a very good friend, one of my closest friends, name, shouts out to my boy Theo. You couldn't tell me his last name wasn't Ogunyogi. a very peculiar last name. His name is, well, I don't want to say peculiar, but in an American context, he had, I think, a Caribbean or an African background as well. But everybody called him Ogunyo. When it was like 3 or 4 years ago, he told me, that's not my name. And please respect what I'm saying, it's Ogunyode. Gory told me, please respect, man. You can call me Amelie, you can call me Gore, you can call me G, but don't call me Gory, because that's not my name and that's not who I am. But that's what I knew him from. But as that transition took place, Gory and Ogunyode became dead for me. Because I realized that as them telling me that, I wanted to respect who they were. And if I was calling them the wrong name and misrepresenting who they were, then I need to be corrected. So I checked myself and I called them the name that they desired. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that has.
No, I mean it makes sense.
It makes sense because that's not who they were. They were living something at that time. But that's not really completely all who they were. And so sometimes it takes time to really feel comfortable about being all who you are. If there's somebody that you care about, then yeah, I do believe that you should respect the fact that, you know, that they want to be referred to as something. And I think that, you know, this is my opinion. So,
it's still your question.
Yeah, it's still my question. Okay. So that was my one little point that I wanted to make. But question that I wanted to ask would be, as you move forward, particularly with the activism, because I know that we've talked about it several times about you being into activism, and you think about Black Lives Matter, you think about some of our historical figures. I don't want to drop names, like, you know, anyway, I'm not going to do it. But when you do research and you find out that many of them were part of the LGBTQ community and things like that. So what is something that 5 years down the line, 5 years from now, we can hear your voice sort of speaking on? What are some things that you want to be creative about, continue to be creative, but speaking on and hearing you on the activism sort of side? What are some of the things that we hear your voice in?
Wow. Okay. I think just to kind of like bring that all in for me, cause that's a lot. So I think maybe and like no, it's not a lot. It's not a lot, but and like
I got you.
In Black spaces and I guess women's spaces and like LGBT spaces, or particularly trans spaces. That's the experiences I'm aware of. But also, I understand, or like my own personal experience. But also, I think just me existing in like that creative space is a form of activism. So, like a lot of the things that I do, I may not always talk about me like being trans, but I think now I'm starting to make it more apparent that I am. Like, for example, like on my Instagram, I may not really talk about like transness or my transness because of the way I'm like socialized, and like I'm still kind of like breaking down certain things even now. No matter how like far in the game you get into, you still deal with like certain things. So, or I guess oppressions or socializations. But I think for me, just my existence, I had to learn that is a form of activism. You know. Yeah. That's even for like Black, for Black folks as well. Like Black folks in general, is just like your existence is a form of activism.
All right, so we would like to say thank you very much for coming on to the show. You've offered a lot of insight, but one of the things though, Kelly, I feel like you've offered insight like predominantly from one sort of topic, because that's been the way that some of the questions that we've addressed, because we want there to be more understanding, more knowledge, more awareness, more acceptance, and so forth. But you offer so many things. I've known you for a long time. Like I said, the activism piece we really haven't even touched on, and some of the things that you've done and are continuing to do. Some of your writing, you know, some of your ambitions and goals in life, you know, is you're a humanitarian, and so I want to talk a lot more about some of those things. So we would like to thank you so much for being on the show, and we're gonna have Kola introduce the next segment.
So our last segment, we like to call it Creative Corner, where you have the opportunity to suggest or present to the people anything you feel like they should know about, a quote, a phrase, a book, any like good read you had, anything that you just feel like the people need to get. So if you have anything, let them know.
Okay, I have two things. Is that okay?
As many as you want.
Okay, so first I have a quote, and it's from Audre Lorde, and it's from one of her pieces, Sister Outsider, and it goes, if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into others' fantasies and eaten alive. And the reason why I use that quote is because I think it's so important for specifically, the Black community, for us to kind of have our understanding of our own identities, regardless of transness or anything like that, but just understand like who you are and how important that is, and what some of the work you can do by like just really understanding yourself. And then also, I guess in regards to this entire conversation, talking about like transness. So one piece that I can refer to you guys can read is called Redefining Realness by Janet Mock. She's like an amazing like go-to person to like understand like, you know, transness, like the identity of it overall, the way she kind of like, I guess, conceptualizes, I used that word earlier, but the way she conceptualizes things is just just amazing. So you guys should check her out.
And then I just let the people know your social media handles, where they can get in contact with you.
Okay.
In case you accept the messages, emails, anything.
Okay, so my Instagram is K is good, so KAEISGOODE, and you can hit me up on there. Really.
So thank you so much, and to piggyback off Audrey Lord, your silence will not protect you, and so I truly appreciate you coming and speaking on something that our lives become silent once we become silent about the things that matter.
I remember that. That's one of your popular ones. I got that from you.
I heard Martin Luther King. I kind of paraphrased a little bit, but thank you so much.
Pleasure. Stay tuned for the next episode of Brown Paper Bay.